Hello, my name is Blazkin, and welcome to my Itto video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about Itto, his build, his teams, how he's played, and whether or not you should pull for him. So yeah, stay tuned, and let's just get into it. So let's go ahead and start off with his builds here. So, first things first, of course, for the weapons. Of course, if you do happen to have it, Red Horn Stone Thresher is definitely his BIS. It's built for him, right? Defense scaling, crazy crit damage. It's extremely good for him. So yeah, that's definitely the way to go if you have it. The other 5-star options are okay. Wolf's Gravestone is always fine. Skyward Pride is okay. If you need the ER, it's pretty good, but otherwise I probably wouldn't run it. Obviously, the Unforged is decent because, you know, Geo, so this actually works okay on him. And I probably wouldn't use Song of Broken Pines, but it's still pretty good, right? It's got attack percent and, of course, the attack speed increase and the extra attack percent that you get off of the other passive is pretty decent. Physical damage bonus is not doing anything really, so it's a little bit sketch. So, for the 4-star options, of course, White Blind is amazing. This weapon's really good. It is just, I don't know, it's just almost built for him, basically, right? It's like quite perfect for him. It does everything he needs, and yeah, it's just a really strong weapon in general. Highly recommend. If you have Serpent Spine at high refinement, it's fine, of course. The point is that you take more damage, and his burst also makes you take more damage, but in the end, the damage that you take is generally speaking less than like a normal DPS, right? Let's just say you only have 2000 defense on Itto. Like a normal DPS with 1000 defense will still be taking more damage than him, even with max stacks of Serpent Spine and his burst up, so I wouldn't worry about the extra damage that you're taking, honestly. But yeah, White Blind's really good. This weapon's excellent. You know, it's craftable, so yeah, I mean, should be pretty accessible. Artifacts, of course, Opulent is by far his best set. Substat wise, you know, defense crit is always the way to go. And of course, you do want a little bit of ER. You don't need too much as far as I can tell. Generally speaking, I've had his burst up pretty consistently, so you don't need too high of ER, but 130 is probably what you're aiming for. Maybe 140, 150, depending on your team, but with triple Geo, you probably don't need quite as much ER. So of course, for main stats, crit on the circlet is always the way to go. Geo damage on the goblet, and defense on the sands. Now, depending on your weapon, attack percent could actually outpace defense percent. It's not really very easy to do. It also depends on your talent levels and other things, but it's possible. So, you know, if you have a really good substat attack sands, you can consider it, but you should probably just do your own calcs for that, honestly. Talents wise, personally, I would go with the normals first and then the burst. Burst, of course, also scales the E, so you don't need to do the E, in my opinion, until after you get the burst and the normals up. But, you know, the E is pretty strong, it has pretty high scaling, so that's, you know, quite a nice little extra damage boost. But if you're using, like, you know, the White Blind or something that doesn't give him quite as much attack, then this thing will only really be hitting hard during his burst rather than anything else, so yeah. His normals, of course, are probably the most important thing in his kit, right? You're charge attacking all the time, then that's really where all your damage comes from, and then of course his burst is what's converting his defense into attack, so yeah, quite important as well. Yep, that's about it for the builds. So I'm going to start off here talking about Itto's rotations, kind of, right? So basically, the main point that I will make is that you should stack your superlative before you burst. Of course, this means that immediately after you burst, you can start charge attacking. And because of this, you can pretty easily stack up another charge attack set and charge attack again during his burst and get 2 charge attack rotations in. That's a pretty big DPS increase, so it's definitely the way to go. Of course, it's pretty simple to charge superlative. You know, 2nd and 4th normals give you superlative stacks, and the E also gives you some extra stacks. So, you know, definitely be doing that in between your charge attack rotations. And outside of that, it's pretty simple, honestly. There's really nothing else to say. Just make sure you're stacked and stacked before you burst. One last thing to mention about Itto's combos is that if you have cryo applied on yourself, you're going to be a lot slower, right? Your normals will be slowed. So, that could be a problem with the Cryomagu, and if that happens, you could actually get screwed and not get your second charge attack rotation in, so definitely keep that in mind. And yeah, let's move on to the teams then. For the first team that we're looking at here, it's a pretty simple triple Geo Gorou team, right? The third Geo can be Albedo, who's really good, of course, decent amount of extra energy, and of course the big thing is that a ton of outfield damage, right? Geo Traveler is pretty good as well. The big thing about Geo Traveler is that he gives decent energy, I guess, and of course passes in crit rate, which is pretty nice. That's a pretty cute buff that you actually get from it. I mean, it's quite excellent if you don't have Albedo. If you do have Albedo though, Albedo is definitely the way to go, honestly. So I'll talk about the second team here really quickly before it's, being shown, but it is a non-Gorou team, just in case you didn't pull Gorou. Honestly speaking, Gorou is a pretty big deal, especially at C6. So because of that, I'm going to be compensating using Bennett. Bennett's, better than Gorou unless you're like C6 Gorou, right? Generally speaking. Of course, it depends on talent levels, etc., but it's generally going to be better than Gorou. Unless you are C6 Gorou, then there's probably a decent chance that Gorou is stronger. But yeah, it's going to be double Geo plus double Pyro, right? The extra attack percent from the Pyro Resonance isn't too relevant, generally speaking, because Itto's got low base attack, plus his best weapons are pretty low base attack, so it's not amazing. But just a little bit of extra damage, it never hurts. The way I ran it was with 2 shielders. A little bit redundant, right? But it's just kind of the general core that you go with. Honestly speaking, I go with Zhong and Toma. You probably don't need the Zhongli, you can probably just run Toma, or you can cut Toma for another Pyro, but it's a little bit difficult to look at other Pyros unless you got like a higher Constellation Klee or something for support. Toma's probably your best bet. But the big thing to note about that team comp is that double Geo means you're getting a lot less energy for Itto, which means that you probably want to compensate by bringing in some more Favonius weapons, and that'll definitely help with your energy generation. Other than that, that team's pretty normal, right? Just make sure you got your shields up, just make sure Bennett bursts up before you burst, and yeah, nothing else to really talk about there. Honestly speaking, when it comes to non-Gorou team comps, there's just a ton of flexibility, right? If you're able to play without a healer, right? You're running Zhongli or something, right? You could even go like, some sort of electro comp with Raiden or something to give extra energy and bridge a little bit of downtime. Like there's a ton of options for the double Geo comp rather than the Gorou triple Geo comp. So yeah, I mean, a lot of flexibility, a lot of ways to play. So to continue here, let's talk about Itto and his strengths. He's very good in Abyss. He does a ton of damage, right? Like, I have a very free-to-play build, right? I'm using an R5 White Blind, right? Which is craftable. My artifacts are pretty bad, honestly. So these stats are pretty, like, normal, honestly. And of course, my talents are pretty high investment, but at this point in Abyss, I think, if you're using a Hyper Carry DPS, you really do want high talent investment, so I don't think the level 9 normal and burst are too out of reach, right? It's pretty easy to 9-star floor 12. There is of course the current floor 12 Abyssal Moon buff, which is pretty big, but if you have like Gorou C6 or something, that of course completely negates that basically, right? Because I'm using C0 Gorou. Actually my Gorou C1, but yeah, in any case, a C6 Gorou will give you like the same, a better buff actually than the Abyssal Moon buff right now. So there's that. And even without the Abyssal Moon buff, I played around with it. I only had a level 70 weapon at that time, so it was a little bit suspect. But I could still get, adequate times for a 9-star, so it should be pretty doable. Now, the free-to-play build is just very good, which is why, I'm showing him off with a White Blind. Normally, I'm showing him off with 5-star weapons and, like crazy artifacts. This isn't that. This is very attainable, I think. So, yeah, I mean, he's doing great. Of course, with the good comes the bad, and there are some problems with him. Now, my biggest issue with him personally is his AoE is spotty. Now, of course, Claymores always have good AoE, quote-unquote, but there's always a difference in the types of AoE that exist, right? Characters like Eula or Gorou, where their AoE is very easy to target and like put in the middle of a group, is significantly stronger than Itto, where, you know, you kind of have to have them grouped up very well, like right next to each other in front of you. Like, it's difficult because you can't really hit something that's behind you, right? But because of that, the Magu Kenki, for example, are a kind of a pain to deal with because the grouping is a little bit tough. Now, to be fair, you can group 2 at a time pretty easily, but, you know, it's a little bit less than ideal, so there's that to consider. Now, of course, when I do it, the grouping was pretty, I don't know, it was pretty solid actually. I got pretty solid groupings on Magu pretty consistently, so maybe it's not as big of a deal as I'm making it out to be, but I think that it could be a bigger deal, right? Another thing to note is that if you don't have superlative stacks, you know, you miss your normals or like something happens, it's a little bit sketchier. You can have a ton of DPS loss just by missing your superlative stacks, you know, be charge attacking and then the burst runs out before your last hit. There's a lot of like punishing plays that can happen, right? And of course, especially with the Rift Towns, you can just miss your charge attacks, you can miss your superlative stacks, your normals, right? There are a lot of issues that can happen, and it's definitely quite annoying. Something that I thought about was, of course, energy. But generally speaking, I personally felt like his energy was fine. Of course, like, I'm not bursting off cooldown all the time and stuff, so, you know, you can have tighter rotations that allow him to burst off cooldown, and if you do that, then you probably will have energy problems here and there. But in terms of how it feels when I'm playing, it doesn't feel like my energy is bad. So I think his energy is fine, but I think theoretically it can be a problem, so that's something to note. Now, of course, when we have to look at characters and analyze them, we have to put them into context. If you just look at, you know, Itto in a vacuum, he's really good, right? Like, he's clearing Abyss super easily, he's really strong, he does a ton of damage, right? He carries your team as well as it should, right? He's good enough as a DPS. But if you start comparing him to the other top tier DPSs, we're looking at like Gorou, Hu Tao, and Ayaka, even like going into like Eula territory, he's not quite as strong as them, generally speaking. Of course, you know, characters like Eula come with their own problems, but generally speaking, his ceiling is lower than these other top tier DPSs. And when he is surrounded by these banners, right, we just had Eula banner, you know, we have Gorou rerun rumors coming out, like, it's a little bit difficult for me to recommend pulling for him. So yeah, I mean, he's a great DPS, but the other DPSs are just better right now. So I guess at the end here, I'll kind of summarize everything that I've kind of said here. He's good. He deals enough damage and is strong enough to 9-star Abyss pretty comfortably, right? Like, Abyss 12 is not really any problem with him. I have pretty subpar substats and, you know, 4-star craftable weapon. And honestly speaking, I'm clearing and 9-starring very comfortably with him. So that shouldn't be a problem. However, of course, the other DPSs currently are just honestly better than him. So if you don't need to pull for him right now, I probably wouldn't, right? Gonyu's probably coming up, so that's something to consider. If you don't like Gonyu's charge shot gameplay, or you really enjoy Itto's gameplay, or, you know, you're a Geo main or something, then yeah, I think pulling for him is, you know, no problem. But Itto's no game-changing DPS. You're not gonna see a huge difference playing him versus the other top tier DPSs, right? If anything, it'll be worse. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing pressing about him that makes me want to recommend pulling for him. But, you know, I don't think there's anything too bad about him that would make me say don't pull for him. Yeah, he's pretty solid. I enjoy him, you know, free to play. We'll probably have a fine time because honestly, White Blind's such a great weapon on him. But yeah, I mean, comfortable for Abyss, no real problems. That's it, but not quite as good as the other DPSs. So yeah, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did like it, please leave a like, comment down below if you have anything interesting to say, subscribe to my channel for more content, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.